everyone, and welcome back to H360 Health Talk. We're here with Debra Hallisey, author of Your Caregiver Relationship Contract and founder of Advocate Mom and Dad. Debra, it's great to see you again.
Thank you. Thank you for having me back. It's good to see you.
So this word negotiate, is it a negotiation? But what about when there's things that just are non-negotiable, for the safety of your mother, for ensuring that she is taking the medication the way that she needs to be taking the medication? What about those things, and how do you begin to have that conversation?
Well, I think there's two things at issue here. And one is yes, I agree that safety is often non-negotiable. I will tell you that one of the things when you're co-creating this contract, this is hard work and it takes self-awareness. And the one thing I will say to you is I want you to always think in the back of your mind, there are certain safety issues that are not non-negotiable. In your mom's case, wandering, right, would be a non-negotiable safety thing.
Sure.
So that, and your mom, I'm not sure she has the capability to understand it. So it becomes a conversation with your father. Dad, we need to put, hooks up high, mommy can't reach, whatever that conversation is. But I also want you to be aware that there are some safety things that we want as the daughter or the son, the caregiver, that's really based on the fact, and this is normal, oh my God, if something happens, it's going to be on me. Right? And that's natural and that's normal and that's okay.
Very normal.
Very normal. And so I always try and think, is this really something that's a safety issue for my mother, or is it my issue about I don't want to have to deal with it? And sometimes that puts a different lens on it, right?
Yep.
But I will also say to you that there are also boundaries that need to be set. And for me, safety becomes a boundary. This is a boundary for me. This is something that I cannot support you if you don't do, and we need to figure out how to do it. Maybe I'll give you an interesting example about not so much boundary, but how sometimes we think about things and it's our way of doing it. So for my mom to watch TV, there are 2 steps into her den. And for months, she would not watch television. She knew I'm going to read my book. And then Joe Biden announced he was running, and he loves Joe Biden. And so I said, Mom, he's on the favorite show of ours and it's taped. Yeah, I'll come down. Time came for her to come down, and this is where that open, trusting, working on hard conversations happen. And she said to me, can I tell you something? I said, what? I'm afraid to go down the steps. Okay. Now, for months, I'd been saying to her, Mommy, let's put the TV in the living room. No. She had all the reasons. That was my solution. TV out of the den in the living room. She says, I'm afraid of this. And when she watches TV, she wears headphones because she can't see. And she said to me, I wonder if I sat in the dining room, we could hear it. I had never thought about that. I'm like, let's check it out.
Right.
Got a comfortable chair, got her all settled. We watched TV together. And then the sitting in that chair became uncomfortable. She goes, I wonder if they work in the living room. Mommy, I never thought about that. They do. My mother and I now watch TV with my mother in her comfy couch, with her blanket over her, with her dog next to her, with her headphones on. And we laugh when she forgets to take them off when we talk. But that was it wasn't safe. Well, it was safety because she felt unsafe going down the steps. My solution wasn't her solution, but her solution worked, and I had never thought of it, ever.
What about the person who's thrown into this for the very first time? And your book, your website, you have so many tools that can help people get through this. But I want to get to we've been talking about some concepts and kind of a conceptual framework, but when the rubber hits the road and we talk about this contract, do you sit down with the person? Do you use the word contract? Do you say, this is how I would like things to work? How would you like things to work? And do you document it on a piece of paper to show that you're serious about this or the way we're going to interact with each other? And then how do you ensure that you're not throwing that back in their face when something happens the toothbrush scenario that pushes you over the edge and you pull out, look, this contract, we said that this is going to work this way.
Yeah.
How do you manage
So
that?
so it's not a piece of paper, because no relationship contract is a piece of paper. It's the spoken and unspoken things you're doing for one another. And so it's a process. Like over the last 5 years of being my mother's caregiver, I learned at different steps along the way. And then we had a conversation and we incorporated that way into being with one another. You know, one of the things as you're negotiating this contract or asking people to change, what I ask people to do is keep in mind the 6 rules of fighting fair, right? And I can't think of all 6 across the top of my head, but one is like, don't bring up past things, like discuss what's now.
Right.
Understand what your feelings and emotions are, and then, you know, take that into account and don't be accusatory. Like, you always do this to me is very different from I'm feeling. And so to answer your question, it is a process, and you will make mistakes and you will learn from it and you will get better and better at it.
I suppose that's why we have an eraser on the end of the pencil that we're using to write the contract, because it's not a one size fits all.
No.
And as you get into it and you're going through the process of either being cared for or being a caregiver, things in this contract will change.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, absolutely. Because what we all know as a caregiver is it's not going to get better. You know, there's going to be a downward health trajectory in the person we love, and if we're not careful, in ourselves, and that there will be crises and emergency. But what the contract, that co-creating this contract does, is give you the tools to deal with that downward trajectory and those crises. You know, I will say to you that one of the things I tried really hard to do was be very practical. So at the end of every chapter, there's either worksheets to fill out or questions to ask yourself or to fill out. So, you know, if you have had the conversation about who the plumber is and who the contractor is and who's your support network and what do you want to do? Like, do you want to continue to go to church? Let's talk about that. Means 9:30 in the morning, you need a ride. If I can't do it, who can? So it's those ongoing conversations that you have about each piece of that, the concepts in there.
There's a chapter in your book here that really caught my eye, and it's titled, it's chapter 6, and it says, ask for and say yes to help.
Yeah.
Right? Important.
Yeah.
How? Tell me a little about that, this chapter. And it is hard to say yes to help.
Yeah.
And sometimes people don't know how to ask for help. People are reluctant to accept help.
Mm-hmm.
And when that happens, nothing good comes out of that, right?
Oh, it's so true. It's so true. So I think that there's a couple levels to this help. First of all, as the caregiver, you need to be ready. You need to be ready to ask for help and say yes to help. But you also need to be aware that your the person you're caring for, may be resistant to it, right? So getting them to understand that you need to ask for help is important. I'll give you, the aha moment for me was when my dad was in the hospital and my mother was on the phone with my aunt, and I heard her say to my aunt, "Oh, we're okay, we don't need help." I almost ripped the phone out of her hands. And that was like, oh my gosh, no, we really do. And so I said to Aunt Pat, you know, we do, if you could do this for us. And then people in a crisis, like my dad being in the hospital, people are so good about saying, do you need help? What I learned was I had to be ready with what they could help with.
Good point.
Right? And so I'm going to give you something that I learned in my training background, and that's the word SMART, S-M-A-R-T, which is an acronym for SMART objective, right? And so what SMART means is that that when you're actually asking for help, that you know that it is something that's achievable, time-bound, measurable. So if somebody says to you, "How can I help?" and you said, "You know, it really help if you could walk the dog." too open-ended. They don't know when, they don't know if fit it in their schedule. But if you say, can you
okay.
walk the dog Tuesdays and Thursdays between 5 and 7 while I visit Dad in the hospital, they have the room to say, yes, it fits in my schedule. It's achievable. It's time-bound. It's measurable. The dog isn't looking to go out as soon as you walk in the door. And they have the ability to say, well, I can't do it 5 to 7, could do it 4 to 6. Or I can't do it Tuesday, can I do it Wednesday? Yes, great. And if you've already talked to your parents about what they need in their daily life, when the garbage goes out,
right,
and when the recycling goes out, and you need help, you can say, you know what, I'm going to be at the hospital. Could you just drag the garbage cans around front for me so I don't have to deal with it? Like, you've already had the conversation about how they live their life, and you can't do it all. That becomes the list you go to for your parents for help. And then you have a separate list for yourself. What's going to keep you sane?
Yeah.
The other thing I will say to you, as I learned, is when people say, you know, in an emergency, people are amazing about offering help. There were times when I said, you know, at the moment, I don't need help, but I'm going to reserve the right to come back to you. And I did.
Call that shit in.
Call that shit in.
Yep.
Also, be aware of people's strengths and weaknesses. My cousin said, what can I do to help? And I said to her, could you go visit Daddy at lunchtime so I can go home and work? And she hesitated, and I said, if you can't do that, that's okay. And she said, you know what? I'm not good in hospitals. I said, tell you what, you come and spend time with Mom, and I'll go.
Perfect solution, right?
So play to their strengths, listen if there's a hesitation, go down the list, and reserve the right to ask for help again.
Well, Debra, thanks for joining me again. The book is a really interesting and great read, all full of not only information, but the tools and things that a caregiver can get in their hands to help them through the caregiver journey. So kudos on the book, and thanks for stopping by and sharing it with us.
Thank you for having me. This has been wonderful.